Hey guys, Benji here with another question of the week video. The question is, how would you describe the neighborhood where you grew up? So I feel like I've done this I've talked about this before in another video, but I'm going to try to keep this one short and sweet. Um, but it might be hard because I loved growing up in my neighborhood, especially the second one. So the first one I want to talk about is down on the south side of Blue Springs, South 2nd Street Terrace. Um, there were lots of kids around there. Not lots. There were some kids around there. It was fun. It was nice. Um, we left there after third grade, so it was pretty little. Josh would have been really little. Josh would have been like 4 years old or kindergarten, something like that. So I couldn't really play with him. He was so little. But I did have my friend Les Smith. So we did kind of everything together, rode bikes, played catch, that kind of stuff, just kind of regular stuff. But I think the main thing, my main memory of that place was that I was little. I remember riding big wheels up and down the sidewalk. I remember down the street, there was like a bike trail that had like bike jumps and stuff on it. Now I remember them being like 5 feet tall. I'm sure if I went back, they would be 1.5 feet tall, and they'd be fun jumps, but not like thinking like I was Evel Knievel. But I think the main part of this question, how would you describe the neighborhood you grew up? It would be my next neighborhood, because that's 4th grade all the way through forever, right? And especially my siblings, that's probably all they remember, right? That's all they had. And that's good, because it was a great neighborhood. So we just had tons of kids. I mean, it was seriously me and Josh, and then it is Vance and Nicole next door. The Griffiths were catty corner, and then the Moharts moved in. They had 2 boys. The Griffiths had 2 girls. Norm was the next house. He was a little older. He was probably 5 years older than me. But then the house next to them was Mark and Scott Wasson. Then it was the Words, and they had 3 boys, Ryan, Jason, and Christian. And then next to them were 2 boys, Nathan and Matthew. They were pretty little, Matthew especially. And then down the street was a kid named Carl Kakara that moved in later. Philip Colson that moved in there. Steve McCartan was in there. So next thing you know, we've got there's just a lot of kids that you can play like football, baseball, basketball with. And we played so much that everybody got good at all the sports. So it wasn't like, you played, but you didn't play that much, so you never got that good. I mean, we played so much, most of us made the basketball team, the baseball team, football if you wanted to go out for it. But we were just good. But other people from other neighborhoods would come over and play with us, because they knew we kind of had a good neighborhood. Because we had it on any day. We could play baseball in the circle. We'd use aluminum bats, but then a tennis ball. So, yeah, I mean, especially when you were younger, it was hard to hit a home run over the houses. But, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got 8 to 10 guys that are playing. Next thing you know, you'd have, John Thompson from the other neighborhood. Carrie Lehau would come over with Vance, and they would play. Our cousins would come in. Kevin and Dave Hovis would come in town and visit, and they'd play. And the Words cousins from California would come in, and we'd play. And you get 2 or 3 more guys in. Next thing you know, you've got a real game of baseball, and it's really fun. So that's really how I would describe the neighborhood growing up. It was just constant fun and constant getting into trouble. Because what we did was we played sports every day, pretty much all day, unless it was like snowing. And if it was snowing, we did sledding. And if it was raining, we would, play in the rain. And then sometimes we would go build a fort. And then we would go through the woods and play in the creek. And then what else would we do? We built bike ramps at the bottom of our driveway. They were like big bike ramps. Like when I've said in another video, no, I said earlier in this video, you know, the first neighborhood I had that might have bike jumps, and I bet you they were small. These were not. These were 2 and 3 foot tall, and guys would jump. I mean, we would measure out who can jump the furthest. You know, we're jumping 15, 20 feet in the air on bikes as 5th and 6th graders. You know, it wasn't that smart. Ryan Word flipped over the front of his handlebars doing it. He was one of the younger kids doing it, and had to have his mouth wired shut for like a month. Yeah, it wasn't good. I mean, people broke stuff. You know, I broke my hand on playing on Phil Coulson's trampoline. Ryan broke that, but yeah, people just, you know, we just get hurt. And then we swam a lot. The Words always had a pool, so we were able to swim there. And then the Bavanettes, Vance's family, they ended up getting one too, so that was nice. So now we had 2 spots that you could go. And the Bobnet's pool was even bigger. It was like 20 by 40, so it was a big pool. So you really could have some good like swimming races and Marco Polo games and all that kind of stuff. They had a high dive too, not high dive, but you know, like the Words had, you know, your normal one that was like, I don't know, a foot off the ground. Or Vance's, the Bavanettes one, it was like, I don't know, 2.5 feet, maybe 3 feet, maybe, I don't know, 2.5 probably. But it made it more fun, right? You jump higher and yeah, you throw footballs and, you know, try to catch them when you're diving in and jumping in. But anyway, so we just did that. We spent the night out, you know, like in tents a lot. And every night in the summer, we played flashlight tag. We called it jailbreak. But we played that like, seriously, I'm not gonna say every night, but man, it's gonna be 98% of nights in the summer. And sometimes there would be 6 people playing, and sometimes there would be 13 people playing. And none of the neighbors got mad. We were running around in their backyards, sometimes being on their deck at 11 o'clock at night, because we kind of had to come in at like 10:30 or 11, I think. And you know, because we're playing, I mean, but also people got dressed up. Like it would be hot out, and I would be in black sweats, black sweatshirt, a black hat, I mean, black shoes, you name it. I mean, we were nuts a little bit. So, but it was so fun. Everything was fun. It was just, you know, from about 9:30 in the morning, we would play sports all day until it got hot. And then we would go swimming. And then, you know, we would ride our bikes up to 7-Eleven and Food Barn. That was before Price Chopper was there. It was called Food Barn. We'd go up there. One of those days, Christian Word darted out. I mean, a truck definitely ran a red light, but he always was the first one to jump out and get across the road, and he went out too early and he got obliterated by a truck, broke his leg, just hit him straight on. I mean, it's amazing he didn't get anything worse, but that sucked. From a selfish standpoint, it sucked because one of our old guys, you know, who like organized the games and was the good, you know, best basketball player, you know, best, you know, most of the sports we played, because he was the old guy. Whoever's the old guy is always the best. And he was out for like a summer, I think almost an entire summer, with a broken leg. And so that sucked. So people were just getting hurt, but yeah, we would go up to the Food Barn, we'd walk through the grocery store. I don't know why we did that. It was just like, hey, we had nothing better to do. And you buy a candy bar for 30 cents, or I remember Christian Word used to buy like fruit. He'd buy like a pear. Like a pear back then cost like 4 cents. And so he gave us something to do. It was air conditioned, right? Felt good. Go to 7-Eleven. In 7-Eleven back then, or at least at ours, they always had 2 arcade games, and they switched them out every, I don't know, a couple months. So all of a sudden you go in there and blow a bunch of quarters, playing arcade games and buying baseball cards. They would sell baseball cards right by the candy, and go in and get 2 packs of Tops and see who you get. And yeah, it was just, the whole thing was just fun. So that's just what we did. So how would I describe the neighborhood? I would say if you've seen the movie Sandlot, it was like that. It was, perfect, from playing baseball, basketball, football, frisbee golf, actual golf with Nerf golf balls that travel about, 50 yards. They were perfect. Building forts, building bike ramps, playing in the creek, kind of getting in trouble, from, we would steal wood from house building sites as they were building houses. We're like, man, this is free wood. Like, little did I know that was stealing. What else did we do? I mean, we just did, anything kids would do, anything you've seen in a movie that kids did, that's just what we did. So, it was kind of perfect. I felt like, I'm trying to think of what else you do. If it was raining out, we'd go inside, and we didn't do it together because everybody had like their own Nintendo. We just go in and play Nintendo for a few hours until the rain stopped, and then you'd go back outside and you start playing. Trying to think of what else we did. I mean, as we got older, we would just go further into town, because we were on the north side, and there really wasn't much north of us besides you get down to the Timber Oaks, Timber Ridge? Timber Oaks, I think, which is where our school was. I mean, there was nothing past that. There was a Sonic at that corner, or maybe it was a gas station. I think it was Circle K maybe. But anyway, you could go the other way, south into town, and you had forever. You had 5 miles of stuff. Now, we wouldn't go that far, but you could go far enough into go to McDonald's. It was cool that we would ride our bike to McDonald's and get a cheeseburger, for 50 cents. And not that we were even probably hungry, but we would get it. And it was great. I mean, we just did. Yeah, it was just fun. Everything about it. I could probably talk about it for days. If I was around Josh and Ryan Word and Jason Word and Philip Coulson and Steve McCartan and those guys, man, I could talk about it forever. We could talk about stories and laughing, and Vance Bovenet trying to not get thrown out at third, which third was the Evans mailbox, and him trying to hold on to that mailbox to not slide off because he was running too fast, and ripping the mailbox off and walking up to the door with that mailbox in his hand. And Jim, he answered the door and hey, here's your mailbox. I just ripped it off. But for every one of those stories, there's 10 or 50 more of oh my God, you remember when we did that? Or you remember when that happened? Or remember when that kid did that? Yeah, there's just funny, crazy stuff. But it was mostly just playing. We just played. It is that whole meme of everybody in our generation just went outside and weren't, our parents didn't want us in the house. They're go outside, go play. And nobody, I assume my parents never worried oh, I hope they don't get abducted. Nobody was abducting us. It was great. So that's my short version of it. I could go on and on forever. It's high school was fine. College was better. After college was even better because you have a job. And so now I had a decent car and money and freedom, real freedom, not I'm broke freedom in college. But I tell you what, from 4th grade until 16 years old, so 4th grade, you're probably 10-ish. So for that, I'm gonna call it 6 years, somewhere between 9 years old and 16 years old. Because once you hit 16 and you had a car, now you didn't really play. Like every year, you know, when Christian and Vance turned 16, they were gone, right? They're like dating girls, they're going to do stuff with their friends because they have a car, they can go do stuff. And then Jason and Steve McCartan were the old guys. And then they turned 16 and then they're gone. And then the next year I turned 16 and I was gone. And then after that, I think it kind of died because like that was all the kids. And now it's just like Ryan Word and Josh, and that's probably it. Really the last year probably that they played was my year because we had me, Philip Coulson, and Carl Kakera. And so, but then we still had Josh and Ryan. So we had 5 guys. You can still play stuff. You can still do stuff. And then you throw in an occasional somebody else. Yeah, you can play. You're still doing stuff. But those 3 guys all started like, you start getting your license and like, oh, Phil's gone. Oh, Carl's gone. Oh, Benji's, he's the youngest one. He's gone. Yeah, then they just stopped doing that kind of stuff. So I don't know what they did after that. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, and Mark Walson. You know, Mark still did a bunch of stuff with us. But yeah, it was just, it's fabulous. And I feel like I kind of got the best of both worlds. I felt like Christian and Vance, who were 2 years older, they were almost a little too old. They probably only had 2 or 3 years of thinking like, man, this is fun. We play sports and stuff every day. And then they were gone. And Ryan and Josh, like, they were so young at the beginning, they probably didn't love it because they weren't, you know, that useful in the sports games. You know, nobody sometimes would guard them, you know, because they just weren't that good because they were just little. You know, if I was in 4th grade, that means they were in 1st. Like, no, not very useful. A couple years later, 3rd grade, you're getting good, but 4th grade, yeah. But so those guys, when they were young, was nothing. And then when all the older kids left, they didn't have anything left. Where me, right in the middle, it was like, I got to play with the old guys. And so that was fun, and they made me a better athlete. And then I also got all the young kids that were still around as the old guys left, so we still could play. So it actually worked out perfect for me. And probably Kit, I don't know what he thought of his thing, of his neighborhood, but it was a totally different story. I don't know anything about that story. I was gone in college. But like I said, I'm on 17 and a half minutes here. And I was hoping to get done with this in 7 or 8, but I can talk about that neighborhood forever because it's just fabulous. I just loved growing up. That was just, yeah, you know, I think that's why we played softball for so many years, and we played every season. We played every season for like, you know, 3 times a year, 3 seasons every year of softball from the time I was 23 or 25, something around that, till I was almost 40. So you're talking, let's call it 15 years, so 45 seasons of softball, and playing sometimes 2 or 3 seasons, 2 or 3 nights per season. I probably played 60 to 70 seasons of softball. I was a pretty good softball player, I will say. But I think that's why we did it, because that's how we grew up. And so that team was kind of that. It was like Jason Word, Ryan Word, me, Josh, you know, that whole crew of guys, and then a couple other friends on the side. But yeah, we're just still like trying to be kids, I think, and trying to play and loving it. You know, I loved it every single week. I look forward to playing softball every time I played. And then basketball too. I mean, everything. So yeah, still a kid at heart. Still love playing. I still like, yeah. I just do. So, all right. I'll see you guys. That's my answer.